Cardi B just dropped another kill shot. And while the numbers keep tilting in her favor, Akbar V is out here handing the internet the shovel to bury her own career. Cardi B didn't have to lift a finger tonight. Cardi B didn't have to record a bar, didn't have to log onto a live, didn't have to type a syllable, because Akbar V walked herself into the most catastrophic public unraveling exercise the culture has watched in months. And if you thought the Tia Kemp moment was rough, if you thought the crying spell was the bottom, buckle in, because what Akbar V did next makes the crying spell look like a warm-up. What Akbar V did next is the kind of tape that gets played in a college marketing class 10 years from now as an example of what not to do when you're trying to sell a record. It is the kind of tape that gets bookmarked in group chats and sent as a warning label to every young artist thinking about running the same play. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most self-defeating stretches of promotion any working rapper has ever willingly recorded, and Akbar V did it in high definition, on a live stream, for an audience that was ready with the receipts. Nobody needs the recap on the Akbar V and Cardi B situation. Everybody with a phone has been watching this saga stretch across years now, and every single chapter has landed the same way. Cardi B keeps climbing, Cardi B keeps winning, Cardi B keeps banking diamond plaques, while Akbar V keeps swinging at ghosts. That's the pattern. That has always been the pattern. And nothing about the last 72 hours has broken the pattern. If anything, the pattern just doubled down on itself, and Akbar V doubled down right along with it. This is the 10th chapter of a book Akbar V never should have started writing, and every new page just adds another paragraph of the same story, only with sharper edges and louder consequences. The internet has a long memory, and the internet has already started laminating the pages. Roll ahead a beat. Cardi B releases the new single. Tia Kemp gets on a live, plays it directly in Akbar V's grill, and the whole thing detonates in the exact way you knew it would. Akbar V goes on tilt. Akbar V starts sniffing back tears. Akbar V starts fantasizing on camera about winning a Grammy someday, about walking up to Beyoncé, about Beyoncé, supposedly saying she's a fan of her work. That is what came out of Akbar V's mouth on a public livestream. That is the tape. And after all of that, after the meltdown, after the fantasy sequence, Akbar V vowed to get back in the booth and try again. Try again. For the 10th time. For the 12th time. Nobody's even counting anymore, and being generous with the count is being polite. Every song Akbar V has recorded in the last stretch of her career has been aimed, in one way or another, at Cardi B. And not a single one of them has moved the needle. Not one. The needle hasn't twitched. The needle hasn't blinked. The needle is buried under Cardi B's plaques, and it isn't coming out for anybody's freestyle. The last attempt didn't even survive the release cycle. Akbar V rapped over a Cardi B beat. Cardi B's label pulled the copyright lever. Atlantic pulled the record down, and the song has been floating around the industry orphaned ever since. Akbar V has been shopping for a beat for months. Months. That's how long it takes to try to salvage a diss that was already dead on arrival. That's how long it takes to try to find someone to hand you an instrumental so you can re-upload the swing you already whiffed on. And while Akbar V has been shopping, Cardi B has been shipping. That's the balance sheet. That's the ledger. And the ledger doesn't lie. The ledger has never lied. The ledger has been telling the same story since chapter 1 of this saga. And every time Akbar V logs onto a live to argue with the ledger just quietly updates its numbers and keeps it moving. But Akbar V isn't done. Akbar V is never done. Because now there's a brand new record on deck, and Akbar V has been previewing it, of all places, on TikTok Live, for feedback. Let that sit for a second. For feedback. Akbar V is soliciting critique on a diss record from the same audience that's supposed to be terrified of it. You feeling me on this? Because this is where the story turns into something the rap game has never really had to reckon with. This is not a diss record anymore. This is a workshop. This is a group project. This is a public unraveling exercise in real time, and Akbar V is the volunteer subject. Nobody in the history of the genre has taken their most sensitive, most heat-seeking, most reputation-defining piece of art and offered it up to a room full of strangers as a rough draft. Nobody, not a single working artist you can name, has ever done this. Akbar V is the pilot episode of a show nobody in the culture wanted to greenlight. Akbar V has been jumping from live to live, hosting session to hosting session, playing the same preview for anybody with a data plan. She was on with Armin. She was on with a stack of creators most of us don't even follow. And every time Akbar V clicks play on the preview, the same thing happens. The room goes quiet. The room gets awkward. The room starts offering pointers. Not compliments. Pointers. And this is the moment the whole illusion collapses, because a diss record isn't supposed to be workshopped. A diss record is supposed to be dropped like a bomb. You hit publish, the culture reacts, The target gets bloodied, the timeline explodes. That's how it's been done since the beginning. Nobody has ever run a focus group on their kill shot. Nobody. Until now. And once you've workshopped the kill shot in public, the kill shot has already died. There is no resurrecting a diss that got critiqued line by line before it ever had a release date. The mystery is gone. The thread is gone. The weight is gone. All that's left is the tape of Akbar V arguing with a stranger about whether the word viral should be repeated 3 times or 4. The rumor is that Akbar V is aiming this new preview at Cardi B through Stefon Diggs, of all people, playing on the situation around Stefon Diggs and Chris Blake Griffith and the whole speculation cycle that's been circling that friendship. Set that phrasing aside. The joke Akbar V is trying to land is that she supposedly tried to introduce Stefon Diggs to a female friend and he wanted her man instead. That's the joke. That's what Akbar V has scraped together for this campaign. Not a direct shot at Cardi B. Not bars aimed at Cardi B's discography, Cardi B's numbers, Cardi B's career, Cardi B's family. Shots aimed at Cardi B's man, and shots aimed at Cardi B's man's teammate. That's the strategy. That's the entire plan. Now, if you have ever taken 5 minutes to study how great diss records get built, you already know that the second you start swinging at your target through a third party, the swing has already lost half its weight. You cannot beat Cardi B by aiming at Stefon Diggs. That is not how the math works. That is not how the culture keeps score. And Akbar V is about to prove that live, in front of the entire timeline, for the 10th time. And here's the part that turns the whole exercise into farce. There is a Twitter account, Female Rap Fan, that has been documenting these lives in real time. Not spinning them, not editorializing them, just capturing them, frame by frame, and posting the receipts. And what those receipts show is not what Akbar V thinks they show. Those receipts show Akbar V clicking play on the new preview and watching the room go into open critique mode. First reaction? Not a fire emoji. Not a scream. Not a cosign. First reaction is somebody in the corner going, I don't like that part. First reaction is somebody in the room going, you need to change that. First reaction is another voice going, the repeated word, the viral, viral, viral. That's the part you should redo. That's what Akbar V got. That's what Akbar V walked into. And Akbar V just sat there and defended it. Sat there and tried to explain the artistic vision behind the repetition. Sat there and told the room the viral hook was intentional because a short clip of it might go viral. Yeah, might. And you can build a career on might the same way you can build a house on a rumor. Do you catch what just happened in that exchange? Akbar V talked herself into a corner in front of a live stream audience. Akbar V argued the merits of a diss record with the same viewers who were supposed to be running around the internet spreading it. And instead of getting hyped, that audience was slicing the record apart in the chat. The chat was a firing squad. The chat was throwing tomatoes. Somebody typed, tell her the truth. Somebody typed, secondhand embarrassment. Somebody typed, where is Young Miami on this? Somebody typed, ask Yandy to weigh in. Somebody typed, sorry, I don't like it. Somebody typed, this is going straight to the trash. Somebody typed, Tia Kemp emoji. Somebody typed, wasting time and money. Somebody typed, nothing about this will go viral. And Akbar V was still on the screen defending the record while the chat scrolled at warp speed underneath her. The chat was operating like a review board. The chat was operating like a jury. The chat was operating like a Twitter thread with a live vote count, and the vote count was not in Akbar V's favor. Not in 1,000 lifetimes could you convince a working artist to voluntarily do this to themselves. Not in 1,000 lifetimes could you convince a professional to walk their unreleased material out to a live audience, hand them the microphone, let them tell you it's trash, and then argue with them about it. That is not how you promote. That is not how you tease. That is not even how you troll. That is a self-inflicted spectacle loop. And Akbar V has been running that loop on repeat for months, because at this point, every misstep in the Cardi B saga has followed the same shape. Akbar V announces something. Akbar V previews something. Akbar V argues with somebody about it. Akbar V ends up crying on live. And Cardi B goes diamond in the background without ever having to acknowledge it. The loop is a machine now. The loop is a functioning content generation engine. The loop is exactly the kind of thing that gets studied by media professors 10 years after the fact, and Akbar V is the case study nobody wanted to be. But it doesn't stop there. That's the part that keeps this story cycling. Because a completely separate corner of the same live wasn't even paying attention to Akbar V's record. That corner had its own agenda. A creator known online as Spider, sitting in the bottom of the screen, decides to launch her own freestyle over Akbar V's own instrumental, while Akbar V is still on the same live. And it isn't a friendly freestyle. It isn't a cosign freestyle. It's a rapid-fire, punchline-loaded, Name 5 of your songs if you can freestyle that hits harder than anything Akbar V has recorded in the last 2 years. The hook of Spider's freestyle is Akbar V being asked to name 5 of her own songs. Then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1 bar. Then Spider tells her to get on her knees and bow her head. On the live, in front of an audience Akbar V invited into the room. That is what happened. That is not rumor. That is on tape. Now roll the visuals in your head. Akbar V is in one corner of the screen with the diss record on the tail end of a group critique. Spider is in the opposite corner throwing acapella daggers with more aim, more polish, and more punch than the record everybody was just critiquing. The chat is on fire. The other live participants are laughing on camera. And Akbar V is watching her own promotional session become an ambush. That is the definition of losing the room. That is the definition of a booth pass permanently pulled. And that is the definition of a curtain call with no encore. Because when the internet flips a live on you in real time, there's no editor to save the moment. There's no take 2. There's only the clip that will now live on the timeline until the algorithm decides to stop replaying it. And the algorithm is not in a hurry to stop replaying it. The algorithm is going to feed on this clip for weeks, because the algorithm is a scavenger, and Akbar V just fed it a fresh carcass. The response from Akbar V to Spider was, and I am saying this with a straight face, a rapid-fire string of insults aimed at Spider, at Spider's body, at Spider's teeth, at Spider's face, at Spider's whole existence. Akbar V went scorched earth on somebody the algorithm barely knew existed 6 hours earlier. And in doing so, Akbar V handed Spider the biggest platform bump of Spider's career. Because now every rap drama page in the ecosystem has Spider's clip. Every commentary channel is running the name 5 songs moment. Every meme page is turning it into a template. Spider walked out of that live with a career upgrade. Akbar V walked out of that live with a shovel and a fresh patch of dirt. The math of that transaction is impossible to overstate. Spider spent maybe 45 seconds delivering that verse. Akbar V has spent years building the platform that Spider stood on. And in the end, Spider got the algorithmic uplift, and Akbar V got the ambush footage attached to her name for the rest of the news cycle. This part is unreal. Because if the point of the Cardi B campaign was to keep Akbar V in the conversation, then the campaign is technically working. Akbar V is in the conversation. Just not the conversation Akbar V wanted to be in. The conversation Akbar V wanted was, did you hear Akbar V's new diss? It's actually crazy. The conversation Akbar V ended up in is, did you see Akbar V lose a rap battle to a random girl on TikTok while trying to preview her own record? Those are not the same conversation. Those are not adjacent conversations. Those conversations are on different planets. And the only reason Akbar V doesn't seem to see it is because the campaign has now been running so long that Akbar V has confused visibility with victory. Visibility is not victory. Visibility is exposure. Visibility is oxygen. And oxygen without a strategy is just a fire that eats its own kindling. That is what Akbar V is doing right now. Akbar V is burning her own supply. Understand what visibility without victory actually costs. Understand the economics of it. Studio time is not free. Booking beats is not free. Building masters is not free. Every diss record Akbar V has cut, every session Akbar V has booked, every engineer Akbar V has paid. That's real money. That's a real invoice. That's a real ledger entry. And what has the return on that investment looked like? A pulled record, a shelved follow-up, a workshop on live, a freestyle ambush, a meme cycle at Akbar V's expense, toxic to the balance sheet. That is what this looks like from the industry side. That is what this looks like from the numbers side. That is why the phones aren't ringing. That is why the collaborations aren't landing. That is why the calls Akbar V wants are the calls Akbar V isn't getting. And that is why the calls Akbar V is getting are the calls no working artist actually wants. The drama page calls, the podcast of the week calls, the reaction channel calls that only exist to squeeze another news cycle out of the mess. You want to know why nobody at the top of the rap food chain is standing next to Akbar V right now? Because a working artist doesn't want the paint that comes with proximity. The rap game is a small, tight ecosystem, and every major artist in that ecosystem is running the same silent calculation. Will this collaboration help my brand, or will this collaboration drag my brand into a fight I don't own? And when the answer is drag, the phone stays on silent. That is why Young Thug's album cycle didn't have Akbar V. That is why Lil Baby's album cycle didn't have Akbar V. That is why the artists Akbar V grew up around. The artists Akbar V came up alongside. The artists Akbar V has real receipts with, have kept a careful distance for months. It isn't personal. It's arithmetic. And when arithmetic is the language your industry speaks, sentimentality does not get a seat at the negotiation table. And Cardi B knows the arithmetic. Cardi B doesn't have to say a word right now. Cardi B doesn't have to log on. Cardi B doesn't have to record a reply. Because every day that Akbar V is on a live workshopping a diss, Cardi B's plaques are getting more plaques attached to them. Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's WAP, the same WAP that has been running laps around the culture for years, just hit diamond. Diamond, 10 times platinum. And Cardi B's new record is already climbing. That is the ledger. That is the scoreboard. And that is why Cardi B doesn't lose sleep over Akbar V. When your competition is doing your job for you, you don't interrupt them. You get out of their way and let them keep going. Cardi B has understood that principle from the beginning of this saga. Cardi B has understood that principle every time Akbar V has recorded a diss. Cardi B has understood that principle every time Akbar V has cried on live. And Cardi B is going to understand that principle when the workshop diss finally sees the light of day, assuming it ever actually does. Now flip the frame back to Akbar V. Because there is a version of this story where Akbar V could have taken a completely different route years ago. Akbar V has actual talent. That is not the debate. Akbar V can rap. Akbar V has a voice. Akbar V has cadence. Akbar V has been in the booth long enough to build the muscle memory of a real artist. The problem was never talent. The problem was strategy. The problem was Akbar V pouring every ounce of that talent into a war with a bigger opponent instead of into a catalog of her own. Every song aimed at Cardi B is a song that could have been a song for Akbar V. Every studio session aimed at Cardi B is a session that could have been a session for Akbar V. That is what makes this a tragedy instead of just a comedy. Because underneath all the mess, there's a real artist in there who's been spending her ammunition on the wrong target. And nobody in Akbar V's inner circle seems willing to walk into a room and say that out loud. Nobody has staged the intervention. Nobody has laid the map on the table and said, this is where the road ends if we keep taking these turns. The saddest part of the whole preview cycle wasn't even Akbar V's bars. The saddest part was Akbar V's face when the room started critiquing her. Watch it back. There is a half second where the smile falters. There is a half second where the eyes slide down. There is a half second where you can see Akbar V doing the math in her head, realizing the room isn't with her, realizing the cosigns aren't coming. And then Akbar V pulls herself back together and starts defending the record. That is a professional artist's worst nightmare, and it's happening on a live stream. In slow motion. On tape. Forever. And the tape is not going to erase itself. The tape is not going to be quietly retired. The tape is going to live in every clip channel's B-roll bank until this decade ends and the next one begins. Because here's the piece nobody in Akbar V's camp has explained to her. The internet doesn't forget. The internet doesn't give a grace period. The internet archives every stumble in real time and replays it on demand. Every meme page has this footage. Every rap drama account has this footage. Every clip channel that runs on Outrage has this footage. And they will keep replaying it until the algorithm gives them permission to move on to the next embarrassment. That is the deal Akbar V signed when Akbar V decided to workshop the record on live instead of dropping it clean. The contract was written the second the phone camera turned on. The terms are non-negotiable. And Akbar V agreed to those terms in exchange for whatever short-term dopamine came with the live view count. Understand the mechanics of what a diss record is supposed to do. A diss record is a weapon. A diss record has one job. A diss record is supposed to embarrass the target, not the sender. And Akbar V has now recorded so many diss records aimed at Cardi B that the diss record itself has stopped functioning as a weapon and started functioning as a mirror. Every attempt reflects back on Akbar V. Every miss lands harder on Akbar V than on Cardi B. Every re-recording, every re-upload, every re-preview, every re-argument in the chat, all of it accumulates on Akbar V's side of the ledger. Cardi B doesn't have a scratch. Cardi B doesn't even have to answer. The mirror keeps doing the work. And a mirror pointed at yourself for too long stops being art and starts being autobiography. The wrong kind of autobiography. The kind that reads like a warning label instead of a legacy. And this is the part where I have to say something that isn't going to sit well with the Akbar V loyalists in the audience. And that's fine. I'm not here to break bad on somebody. I'm not here to campaign for anybody's downfall. I have never invested a single dollar or a single minute into wanting Akbar V to lose. But I also can't sit here and pretend the tape doesn't say what the tape says. And the tape says this campaign has cost Akbar V more than it has ever cost Cardi B. The tape says the campaign has isolated Akbar V from the collaborators Akbar V needs. The tape says the campaign has made Akbar V a punchline in a genre that historically doesn't hand punchlines back. And the tape says Akbar V is the only person who can stop the campaign. Not Cardi B. Not Tia Kemp. Not Spider. Not the chat. Not the algorithm. Akbar V. The pen is in Akbar V's hand. The pen has always been in Akbar V's hand, and the pen keeps writing the same sentence over and over again. Curtain call, no encore. That's what I'd tell somebody in Akbar V's camp if the phone rang. Curtain call, no encore. Take the record off the release calendar. Take the Cardi B name out of the studio. Take the diss angle off the whiteboard. Sit down with a producer who has a catalog. Sit down with a writer who has a hit. Sit down with a manager who has a 5-year plan instead of a 5-day plan. And build. Just build. Because at the moment Akbar V stops swinging at Cardi B, the whole story shifts. The commentary channels move on. The meme pages find a new target. The algorithm stops running the ambush footage. And Akbar V finally has room to actually be an artist again. There is still a version of the timeline where Akbar V's name gets attached to a real career. But that version does not include another workshop diss on TikTok Live. That version starts with silence, and silence is the one thing Akbar V has refused to give the culture from the beginning. But the odds of that happening? The odds of Akbar V voluntarily stepping off the Cardi B hamster wheel? Not in 1,000 lifetimes. Because the Cardi B saga has become Akbar V's identity now. It's the thing every viewer clicks on. It's the thing every stream host asks about. It's the thing every live commentator uses to bait the algorithm. And when the mess becomes the marketing, the mess is the last thing to go. That's the trap. That's the ghost partner grudge. That's the loop. And Akbar V has been running that loop so long she stopped noticing the walls of it. The loop is a room now. The loop is a house. The loop is a full address. And Akbar V has been living inside of it long enough that the outside world starts to look like the abnormal option. Here's what I keep coming back to, though. The clip of Akbar V on the live is not really about Akbar V. Not deep down. Deep down, that clip is a warning label for every artist coming up behind Akbar V. Every young artist watching. Every rapper with a follower count and no strategy. Every creator thinking about workshopping their own kill shot in front of a live stream chat. That clip is the receipt. That clip is the warning. That clip says, do not do this. That clip says, your competition doesn't need to beat you if you're willing to beat yourself. That clip says, the algorithm will not save you from your own timeline. And that clip says, when the room stops laughing, it is already too late to change the joke. That is the actual educational value of this whole cycle. Not the drama, not the tears, not the freestyle. The educational value is a warning label, and it applies to every artist watching this play out from a safe distance. And Cardi B just keeps stacking. Cardi B just keeps dropping. Cardi B just keeps letting the numbers do the arguing. That is why Cardi B has been on the other end of every Akbar V campaign for years without ever losing altitude. Because Cardi B figured out something Akbar V still hasn't figured out. The loudest response is silence when your catalog is already speaking. The loudest response is a plaque on the wall. The loudest response is a chart position that keeps climbing. Cardi B has been running that playbook the entire time. Akbar V has been running the opposite playbook, and the scoreboard reflects it. The scoreboard has always reflected it. And if you go back and watch every stage of this saga from beginning to end, you can timestamp exactly the moment each new chapter began, because each new chapter began with Cardi B doing nothing and Akbar V doing everything. And here's where the story gets messy, because Cardi B is not standing down. Cardi B has already flagged in interviews that a response is coming. Cardi B has already teased that the new record cycle is not close to over. Cardi B has already signaled that when Akbar V finally releases whatever the workshop diss ends up being, Cardi B will not let it sit unanswered for long. Which means what we have watched over the last week is not the end of the arc. It is the middle. It is the setup for the next detonation. And if this is the middle, then the ending is going to be one of the most one-sided endings the culture has seen in a long time. Because Cardi B does not enter a fight to draw. Cardi B enters a fight to end it. And when Cardi B decides the arc is over, the arc is over. Think about the pieces on the board. Cardi B has the label. Cardi B has the plaques. Cardi B has the cosigns. Cardi B has the reach. Cardi B has the diamond certifications. Cardi B has the discography. And Akbar V has a workshop diss, a shelved re-upload, a spider ambush, a Tia Kemp live, a fantasy about Beyoncé, and a comment section that's turned on her. That is not a fair fight. That was never going to be a fair fight. And every additional round Akbar V voluntarily books just widens the gap between what Akbar V can deliver and what Cardi B doesn't even have to try to deliver. The gap is not narrowing. The gap has never narrowed. The gap has been widening in real time for every second of this campaign, and the widening speed is only accelerating as new footage drops. If Akbar V's camp is listening, and I hope somebody in Akbar V's camp is listening, the play is not another diss. The play is not another live. The play is not another workshop. The play is not another argument in the chat about whether the viral hook should be a viral hook. The play is a hard reset. The play is a full pivot. The play is a catalog record. The play is a feature run. The play is anything at all, that does not have the words Cardi B attached to it. Because as long as Cardi B is the thesis of Akbar V's next release, Akbar V's next release is walking into a fight it cannot win. And a fight you cannot win is not a fight. It's a formality. It's a countdown. It's the sound of a career slowly being reclassified from artist to cautionary tale. But I already know how this is going to play out. I already know the next episode of the story. Because every previous chapter has followed the same pattern, and human behavior does not usually break its own pattern. The next chapter is another live. The next chapter is another preview. The next chapter is another critique in the chat. The next chapter is another shelved record. The next chapter is another meme cycle. And Cardi B is going to spend that entire next chapter doing what Cardi B has always done. Working, winning, watching, and laughing at the timeline when nobody is looking. Because that has always been Cardi B's advantage in this feud. Cardi B is not emotionally attached to the outcome, and Akbar V is. And when one person is playing chess and the other person is playing themselves, the game is decided long before the last move. I don't want anybody to walk away from this thinking I'm dancing on somebody's grave. I'm not. That's not the assignment. That's not what any of this is about. What this is about is watching a real artist run the wrong play so many times in a row that the wrong play has become the identity. And once the wrong play becomes the identity, the industry stops offering the right play. That is the trap that has closed around Akbar V. And it will not open again on its own. Somebody in the room has to open it. Somebody in the room has to be brave enough to interrupt the pattern. And so far, nobody in the room has raised a hand. The verdict on the tape is simple. Akbar V is not without talent. Akbar V is not without a lane. Akbar V is not without a shot at a real career if she chooses one. But Akbar V's current campaign is a public unraveling exercise, and the longer that unraveling continues, the harder it will be to reverse. That is the reality. That is what the receipts say. That is what the ledger says. That is what the chat said. That is what Spider said with a freestyle that didn't need a chorus. That is what Tia Kemp said with a phone speaker. That is what Cardi B has been saying, without saying anything at all, for years. And that is what the industry has already decided long before I ever picked up a mic. The verdict is unanimous, and the verdict was not close. There is one more angle to this whole cycle that nobody in the commentary space has really unpacked yet, and I think it is the most important angle of all. The Cardi B and Akbar V saga is not a rap feud anymore. It stopped being a rap feud the moment the diss records stopped charting. What it has become is a case study in what happens when an artist trades a career for a storyline. Akbar V has traded her career for a storyline. The storyline is called the Cardi B feud. And storylines end. Storylines get replaced. Storylines fade out. And when this storyline finally ends, the question that will hang over Akbar V's name for the next decade is going to be a simple one. What did Akbar V actually build during all of this? What is the record we point to? What is the album we play at the cookout? What is the plaque we point to on the wall? And if the answer to those questions is silence, then the storyline was not worth the trade. That is the piece that keeps me up when I think about this. Because I have watched enough artists come and go to know how this ends. I have watched enough talent get burned in feuds like this to know the shape of the ending. And the shape of the ending is not a comeback story. The shape of the ending is a slow fade, followed by a nostalgia clip, followed by a whatever happened to article 5 years down the road. Nobody wants that ending. Nobody signs a record deal to end up as a whatever happened to headline. But the whatever happened to headline is exactly what a campaign like this manufactures. It manufactures it slowly. It manufactures it quietly. And it manufactures it in front of the whole timeline, while the artist involved is too busy defending viral hooks to notice. Cardi B is not going to manufacture that ending for Akbar V. Cardi B does not have to. The ending is being manufactured by the campaign itself. Every workshop session is a brick in the wall. Every live is a coat of paint. Every meme cycle is a load-bearing beam. And the whole structure is going up around Akbar V while Akbar V is inside it arguing with the contractors. The house is being built. The house is going to close its own doors. And when the doors close, nobody will be around to hand Akbar V the key back. The moral of the whole cycle is not complicated. It is boring. It is the same moral every artist coming up in the streaming era has heard 1,000 times and refused to internalize. The moral is, build the catalog before you fight the war. The moral is, numbers do not lie, and neither does the ledger. The moral is, if the room is not with you, the record is not ready. The moral is, silence is a weapon in the right hands, and Akbar V has been trying to fight a silence war with a megaphone. Every megaphone eventually runs out of batteries. Every batter eventually runs out of swings. Every campaign eventually runs out of chapters. And when this campaign runs out of chapters, the last page is going to be blank, because Akbar V will have used every word on Cardi B and none of them on Akbar V. Now, if any of this cracked the code for you, if any of this filled in a gap in the story you have been trying to piece together on your own timeline, do me a favor. Tell somebody. Send it. Share it. Drop it in a group chat. Forward it to a friend who has been asking about the situation. And if you have been rocking with the channel, hit that subscribe button so the next chapter lands in your feed the second it drops. Because make no mistake, this story is not over. Cardi B is loading up the response. Akbar V is loading up another live. Spider is loading up another verse. Tia Kemp is loading up another phone speaker. And the chat is going to be right there, running the play-by-play, until one of these dominoes finally topples for good. Drop your read in the comments. Do you think Akbar V is going to pivot? Or is Akbar V going to keep swinging until the last note of the last Cardi B record? Do you think Cardi B's response is going to land clean? Or is Cardi B going to sit back and let the numbers keep talking? Do you think Spider is going to keep the momentum from that ambush freestyle? Or is Spider going to fade back into the algorithm the same way she came in? Tell me. I read every comment on this channel, and the next breakdown pulls directly from what y'all put in the box below. So do not hold back. Tell me what you saw on the tape. Tell me what you heard in the chat. Tell me what you think Cardi B is going to do next. And tell me whether Akbar V has a single move left that does not end in another livestream meltdown. And while y'all are in the comments, keep an eye out for the next drop. Because the Cardi B and Akbar V arc is about to get one of the biggest plot twists it has ever had. The receipts are already in motion. The next live is already booked. The next preview is already being cut. And when the next chapter lands, this channel is going to be the first place it gets broken down beat by beat, receipt by receipt, timeline by timeline. Peace. Stay locked. And if you're new to this channel, welcome to the room. This is where the real story lives. This is where the real receipts get read. And this is where the timeline gets translated for the people who actually want to understand what is happening in the culture instead of just watching it scroll past. Peace again. And I will catch every single one of you on the very next one.